Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zias Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm here inside Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, home of the Kraken and the Seattle Storm, the WNBA team. I'm joined by Rob Johnson. You are the Chief Sustainability Officer for the arena and the teams.
I appreciate that promotion. I'm the Senior Vice President, one day aspiring to be Chief Sustainability Officer here for...
We're the head sustainability person, right?
That's exactly right. And with me...
And with you is...
Kaan Yalkin with the Climate Pledge at Amazon.
Okay, well, so this is great. So I've been wanting to come here and talk to you guys for a while. From what I understand, the Climate Pledge Arena is the only carbon neutral net zero sports facility in the world. So that's kind of an interesting achievement. I'm curious about the name though. So talk to me a little bit about just how, I know AWS or Amazon's the primary sponsor for the facility. So why did you choose this name versus calling it something like Amazon Arena?
Well, Amazon co-founded the Climate Pledge in September of 2019, and with the Climate Pledge, we set out to be net zero by 2040, which is 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement, and we decided we would create a global community and a vision of other companies that were willing to take on that commitment with us. And so the Climate Pledge has now grown into a community of more than 450 companies who have made that commitment. Shortly after we co-founded the Climate Pledge in 2020, we announced that we'd purchase the naming rights to this building, and we would actually name it after the pledge to serve as a regular and long-lasting reminder of the urgency around the climate crisis.
And so for those not familiar with the Climate Pledge, can you just dive into that a little bit, what it is?
Yeah. So companies commit to being net zero by 2040, and there's three key requirements that they have to commit to when they sign on to the Climate Pledge. So the first is regular measurement and reporting. So they have to start measuring and reporting their carbon emissions within a year. The second is that they decarbonize their business in line with the Paris Agreement, so they make changes to their value chain in order to decarbonize. And the third is that they neutralize any remaining emissions with credible offsets. And the timeline with that is between the time that they sign and between 2040. Every company, of course, has a different timeline and journey.
And how many organizations are part of this now?
There are 450 companies now that have signed on to that across 55 countries and 35 industries.
Okay, and I'll make sure there's a link to the Climate Pledge in the YouTube description below. So now, Rob, since you're in charge of making sure this facility aligns with that, can you tell me about some of the things that you've done here that have helped you achieve that goal? And frankly, to be net zero today, I think is pretty amazing.
It's a phenomenal achievement. I'm really proud of our ownership group for setting us on this course.
So in order to hit that, though, just talk about that, how important that is, because if the ownership group isn't on board with it, then it's not going to work, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, even in a city like Seattle, where sustainability is a key part of our values here in the Pacific Northwest, you still need ownership who want to step up and really take first of its kind commitments in the sports and live entertainment space. So we're standing inside this beautiful arena with its awesome 1,700 square foot living wall. But not only do we have this as a visible element of sustainability, we're an all electric arena. That helps to keep our emissions low. We're here in Seattle, where most of our energy comes from hydro, which means that our emissions are even lower. But we track all of the emissions associated with the operations of the facility, whether that's fan travel, whether that's food and beverage consumed, whether that's retail purchases, for every single event, and we account for it. That's how we get to carbon zero on day one for Climate Pledge Arena. Why does that matter? Well, for our construction of our facility, we emitted about 40,000 metric tons in building this beautiful building. We emitted about another 40,000 metric tons in the first year of operations. So if we're really serious as a globe about taking on the responsibility of decarbonizing our planet to meet those scientific objectives, we got to start with operations, and we got to do it now.
Yeah, okay. So tell me what some of the things you've done in here then. I see the wall here, and I'll include pictures of it obviously on screen, but what are some of the other actions you've taken to be able to hit that?
So it starts before you even get here in the building, right? The building is really cool because we not only have an all-electric facility, but we harvest rainwater from the roof, and we use that rainwater to resurface the ice for our home games and practices. So we've got the first rain-to-rink Zamboni system in the NHL. Our fans can get free public transit for every Climate Pledge Arena event, making it simpler and easier for you to get here, but also reducing our carbon footprint. We're a functionally zero waste facility, which means that we're diverting more than 90% of our waste away from landfills to recycling and composting. There's all kinds of really incredible activations that are happening here, from eliminating single-use plastics to sourcing our food from within 300 miles, that we're really, really proud of and we think differentiates us from a lot of other arenas in the world.
Yeah, and the rain to rink, we were talking about that before, and just talk about that you were saying the water is like too clean, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we have this 15,000 gallon cistern that's buried underneath our western plaza. It collects rain from 1/4 of our roof. We link it down to the Zamboni room, and what our Zamboni Ice team says to me is that the water in a traditional municipal water supply has fluorides and all these other minerals that don't like to freeze. They create imperfections in the surface of the ice. But our rainwater is so clean that they actually have to dirty it up a little bit to have it meet NHL standards. And yet still, they think it creates a cleaner surface and therefore a faster skating environment for a lot of our players.
Yeah, well, that's you would think that would be, the league would want that everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Really
Yeah.
fun.
Now, and talk a little bit more about the waste as well, because we did talk about that a little bit before when we were prepping, but I thought that was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah.
How did you get to the point where you could have north of 90% of your waste being recycled or composted?
It starts at the top with what you procure to be in the building, right? So for us, we had to work closely with our food and beverage partners and our friends at Amazon to make sure that everything that came into the building easily fit in one of those two categories, composting or recycling. The second thing, once you're here in the building, we've got to have really clear signage that shows you, maybe after having a couple of Modelos, about where you should actually throw that thing. And third, we have a really incredible process and system here where we're training staff to recognize what goes where. But more importantly, down on our loading dock, we have human beings who are inspecting every bag and pulling stuff out that's not supposed to be there. So that on-site sorting allows us to really have a rocket ship up to make sure that we're meeting those 90% or better targets.
So again, that's the ownership group willing to invest the money to do it right, where when you think of sports teams, there are a lot of talk about profits and how much they're paying players and things like that. So that's quite an investment they're making themselves.
That's exactly right, but it's also part of the ethos and the value system. When you walk into a building that's named after a cause, not a corporation, you expect to see things different. And if you walked in here and you saw the same old thing that you saw in every other building, you would think about it as every other building. Our job is to try to inspire those 17,000 fans here for every event to think about the ways in which they can respond to their natural environment and help to save it, and the things that they can do to reduce their carbon footprint. So for us as a facility, we think that's an important North Star.
Now, I know facilities like this, especially ones with ice, use a lot of electricity, right? Keeping it cold, things like that. So how are you able to actually design it in a way that you could power it all electric? Because that seems like a very big ask.
It was an incredible engineering feat. I mean, we're doing this over Zoom in the middle of a global pandemic. We're redesigning an entire facility that was already permitted and under construction, right? So not only did we have to eliminate all those fossil fuel uses, but we had to contact manufacturers in other parts of the world to scrap those plans, scrap the manufacturer, and restart everything. It meant that we needed to do things differently. We're going to pull energy in a much more significant way than we would have if the building was powered by natural gas. But it's absolutely worth it. When you walk in the building, you can feel the energy differently than you would from a building that's powered differently.
Now, I know Amazon's a big partner, but how did your other partners accept this, right? Obviously, your food and beverage partner, you've got equipment partners, things like that. They would have had to change their practices as well. Did they embrace it? Was there a little resistance?
In every project, there's going to be some resistance, and if you're trying to do something as significant as us, you have to find ways to overcome those little institutional barriers. What I'm so proud of is that whether that's with our partners at Amazon or with some of those food and beverage partners like Delaware North, a retail partner at BDA, in every instance, people recognize we're trying to do something different, and that's exciting to them because they see this is the future. When you ask people like Kaan's age in their 30s and 20s, what's the most important value for them?
What about me?
It's about the environment, right? They want us to save the environment. They want us to show what we're doing to save the environment. So this is an important business practice for us too. Leadership is important on sustainability here in Seattle, because that's an important value, but it's also really important as we try to grow a fan base who are going to be following the Kraken or the Storm for generations to come.
All right, and Kaan, I want to bring the mic back to you here. So despite this being a facility that's known for being net zero, there's a lot of really cool technology in here as well from Amazon. So can you talk about some of the Amazon innovations that you would find in Climate Pledge Arena?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we struck this partnership with the Kraken and Climate Pledge Arena, we brought some of our company DNA to the project, which is pioneering and long-term thinking, but also moving really fast, right? And so this building being net zero today to offer fans that sustainable fan experience is kind of just the beginning. We also brought in Amazon's technology. So we have the Just Walk Out technology in a handful of our stores here, which we showed you earlier. This has removed a huge amount of friction in the fan experience. We all know how stressful it is to get something to eat or something to drink when you're trying to go to a sporting event or a concert.
Well, someone always scores a goal when you go.
Yeah, and you don't want to be spending time doing that, right? And so being able to use your palm or quickly insert your credit card to walk in and grab something and walk right out has completely changed the fan experience. And so we've brought that technology into the building. In addition, we leveraged AWS technology to build a carbon modeling dashboard that actually helps Rob and the team at the Kraken measure their emissions, because that's a key component of the sustainability goals that we set out when we struck the partnership. Not only would the building be net zero, but we would continue to measure and report year after year to ensure that we are tracking correctly.
All right, and so the Palm you talked about was the Amazon One, which was just actually demoed at reInvent this past fall. So how many facilities have that in it now?
I don't know the exact number, but I see that it's growing on a pretty regular basis, and I know right here in Seattle we have 3 major sporting facilities that are using that technology. And generally speaking, fans love it, right?
Yeah, well, it's fast and easy. So
right, yeah.
And Rob, back to you. So so when you think about all that you've accomplished here, what's next? What's on your radar to take it to the next level?
It's a great question. There's a couple of key elements that we know are super important to us. The first of which is implementing fully renewable resources to power the building. Right now, we're buying renewable energy credits to get to effectively net zero energy. But we're working hard with our local utility, Seattle City Light, to stand up new solar panels on the eastern side of Washington, where it doesn't rain quite so much over here, and allow them to wheel that energy into the grid to equal the amount of energy consumed by the building. Hugely important for us as the next step. Secondly, we still have a lot of work to do with our food and beverage partners to think about ways we can be even more sustainable in the building. Right now, I would guess we're sourcing 60% or greater of our food ingredients from within 300 miles. While that's a huge number, we'd love to get that number up to what is kind of a gold standard in the industry of about 75%. And
why is the 300-mile number important?
When you think about seasonality, making sure that you're eating locally, 300 miles is generally the agreed upon amount of time that it would take to truck something in as opposed to fly it. And that trucking component is actually a lot lower emissions than it is to fly something in. So a lot of it is about eating locally, eating things that are produced locally, but also that has a lower carbon footprint. Okay. And then the third thing I would say is we're thinking really hard about reusables. So in our space, everything you can buy and consume in the building is all recyclable or compostable. But what if those elements were in a hard plastic material that could be reused multiple times? What would that keep out of the landfills? How much more sustainable would we be as a result of those kinds of process changes, operational changes? Those are some of the things that are kind of on the horizon for us as we look forward.
All right. And how far away do you think you are from
I would hope we're implementing each of those in the next 18 to 24 months. So we, as Climate Pledge Arena, never feel like we're resting on our laurels. though we've done some really incredible things in this space, we still feel like we've got a lot of work to go, and those are probably the top 3 on the to-do list for the next 2 years.
And Kaan, from an overall Amazon perspective, can you just talk about what some of the goals are for the company has in this area, and then where the company is relative to those goals?
Sure. Well, we set out on this partnership with Climate Pledge Arena to show other companies around the world that if you move really quickly and you have the right folks at the table, you can achieve great things in sustainability fast. There's a lot of talk about long-term and companies set long-term goals, but we wanted to do something really, really quickly here in our hometown of Seattle, and we've achieved that in partnership with the Kraken. From an Amazon sustainability standpoint, we're making progress on a lot of our other goals. So we're quickly electrifying our fleet. We've committed to purchasing 100,000 Rivian electric delivery vehicles. And the reason we're doing that is because, similar to what Rob's doing here in the arena, we need to send demand signals to the industry for sustainable products and services. So the industry needs to react and respond to the fact that these are the types of things that we want to buy, right? Our fans and our customers, they're demanding sustainability from us, and it helps us achieve our goals. And in terms of the partnership, it's a long-term partnership, so we're going to continue to work hand in hand and learn from each other. And we've still got a ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress.
All right. Well, that was a fascinating discussion. So, anything else you want to add, either?
Thank you so much for having
thank
us.
you.
No, thank you. And so, on behalf of Rob and Kaan, I'm ZS Caravala inside the Climate Pledge Arena, home of the Seattle Kraken and the Seattle Storm for the WNBA. Thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on another ZKast.